Great to have you with us. In our first story, the Member of Parliament for Sekondi, Agyapa Mercer, says the opposition NDC's comparison of the Agyapa royalties deal with the PDS concession is an absurd metaphor. He says the fact that the PDS deal was cancelled because of a breach does not mean the Agyapa royalties agreement will have similar challenges. The minority NDC has strongly opposed government's decision to sell half the nation's interest in our gold resources to raise monies for development. Speaking on Prime Morning on Joy Prime Television, Mr. Mercer, however, believes their reasoning is untenable.
You can only make that assertion when there's in fact some breach that would of necessity require an action to be taken by the government of Ghana. We can't be invited into a realm of speculation when there's absolutely no basis. Otherwise, we will never have any commercial transaction, because people will cite that, well, there was a breach in PDS that led to termination. And so what is the guarantee that there will not be a breach in this transaction to lead to a termination? How do we even allow ourselves to be dragged into that realm of absurdity? This is a transaction that is good for this country, well thought through, would necessarily enable us manage our mineral resources better, and all the documentation that has been presented to Parliament.
Right.
If the IPO is successful, because IPOs do or potentially could fail. We've had IPOs in this country that have failed because there's a threshold that you need to attain. If you attain that threshold and it is successful, Ghana will be the better for it.
He says the identities of the buyers will be made public as the law demands.
Any company that is listed in an IPO, on no mean a stock exchange than the London Stock Exchange, would require that full disclosures of the persons who then buy the shares in the public listing. And I'm sure that potentially if you have a few pounds sitting home with to invest, you may wish to also, indeed, there's going to be another listing on the Ghana, you and I, who don't have or potentially may not have any pounds sitting anywhere, to participate in that. It's an investment choice. And so, yes, I mean, I purely on account of my belief in transparency would necessarily support any call for disclosures to be made. That in itself is inherent in use of stock exchange in the first place.
Would you also support a call for the exclusion of any businesses which may prove to have ties with the current government?
Why would the Ghanaian companies be prevented in an IPO? This is not an under the table transaction, and I cannot speculate as to which companies may be interested in participating in the listing. But I shudder to think that, to suggest that some Ghanaian companies or some individual Ghanaians ought necessarily be prevented in a transaction that has been valued by global experts, that has been marketed by global companies of repute. Ghanaians, by reason of the fact that they are associated with the current government, ought to be prevented from acquiring some, and of course benefiting from the return that comes therefrom, to the exclusion of everybody else on the face of this earth. I think it will be far-fetched.